So let's wait for participant to join and then we'll start. We will give maybe 3-4 minutes to everyone to join. So it's for most of us, it's an office day. So we may. By the way, we don't have to be so silent. We can keep talking.
Maybe we should give 2 more minutes for the participant to join.
Yeah. Right. So what else is going on, Roman? So what new you are doing?
What's the new stuff I'm doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems I was busy this week trying to put together my thoughts on OKRs, objectives, and key results. As I get regularly asked what I think about OKRs, or if some of the techniques that I recommend can be substituted by OKRs. So, for instance, can you have OKRs on a product roadmap, or what's the relationship between OKRs and a product roadmap? Or if I use OKRs, do I need can I do without product roadmaps? So those kind of things. And so, yeah, that's been going on for me this week, it seems.
Okay, good. So it's already 3 minutes over. So shall we wait for maybe another 60 seconds and then start?
Sure.
We already have 30 participants.
Yeah, sure.
I think we should start now. It's 7:34 in my watch. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, we can start here.
Okay, I think let's start. Okay, good. So good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on the location you are. And thanks a lot for joining. Thanks a lot. So I know it's in a working day, so some of you may are in your office, or some of you may have just to get out of the office. And I know it's really hard to do your office work and then again attend in a online session. So thanks a lot for joining. And before we jump into the actual Q&A or the session, let me do a quick housekeeping. So the way we have organized this session is while doing the registration, some of you may have put up your questions, so we have categorized or consolidated those questions, and we are going to ask those questions to Roman. So he's going to respond to those questions. For those who didn't get opportunity to, or who missed out writing or putting their question, they still have an option. So you can post your question in the Q&A section, or maybe in the chat window, and depending on the time, we will try to ask those questions to Roman. The other thing is there are actually two, looking at the question, we come up with actually two categories, or two I would say bucket. First was the product management roles and responsibility, and second is the product strategy. So these are the two categories we are going to discuss. Right. I think that's it from my side, right? And this since it is going to be online, so there is too much of technology involved. So be ready for some technical glitches also. So you never know, anything can go wrong. Maybe my camera, my video, or voice, internet. So, but we will try to make it as as good as for you. So in case if something goes wrong with my side, so Amit and Dinesh, so our co-host, they are going to take care of it. And a quick intro. So myself, Sanjay, along with Dinesh and Amit, three of us are going to be your co-host, and our guest, Roman Pichler. So I think for those, and I don't think anyone who doesn't know Roman, but just in a quick intro. So Roman Pichler is a product management expert. He's a trainer and consultant. He teaches product management people, product owners, product leaders. He is the founder and director of Pichler Consulting, and he is the author of some of the best books on product management. Right, and the very recent one, How to Lead in Product Management. So this is what I got from internet and from Roman. So anything which you want to share, Roman, which is not available on Google or internet?
Well, that's very, very nice of you. Thank you for the kind introduction. There's not much more to say, really. So at least not from a professional perspective. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. So let's move on. Let's jump into our session. So let's start with our first part. Right. This is what there are two questions in it. This is what people ask. So what is the difference between this product manager and the project manager? Right. And what advice would you like to give to aspiring product managers?
Yeah, nice. So two great questions. I'll see if I can share my screen. Can I share my screen, Sanji? Thank you. That allows me to do some drawing.
Okay.
Just need to rearrange here all the Zoom windows. So to scribble a little bit in order to explain and share my answers. So what's the difference between a product manager and a project manager? And I think for me, the answer in a way is already contained in the role descriptions, or the role titles, I should say. So there's a distinct difference between a project and a product. A product really for me is an asset, an entity that creates value. So let me try and scribble this down. So a product is something, apologies. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Try again. Well, actually, yeah, I'll try again. Yeah, much better. So a product is a vehicle that creates value, something that creates value for the users and possibly customers. And something that at the same time, I think has to create value for the business. So it's an asset, a value creating vehicle. You can think of a little app. What comes to mind? Well, the app that I'm using right here, Microsoft PowerPoint, part of the Microsoft Office suite, one of the main cash cows of Microsoft, that will be a revenue generating product. But then you may want to take a product like, say, the Amazon website that allows us to shop online, or the website of any other online retailer. That will be a product that indirectly generates revenue. Allows us to purchase whatever product we want to purchase. I don't know, a mirrorless camera, just to give you an example. And then we have products like traditional IT solutions that really exist to increase productivity and reduce costs. But there always has to be, I feel, tangible business benefit, one or more tangible business benefits. And at the same time, the product really has to offer some value to the users and the customers. So my business has licensed Microsoft Office, and for my business, it's a productivity tool. And for me as a user, I use Microsoft Office, and particularly PowerPoint here, well, to share ideas with you and be able to a certain extent, do some whiteboarding here. And a product has a life, a distinct life. So what I have here is called the product life cycle. A product life cycle, and that's a traditional way to capture the development of a product across its life. So you see here that a product is understood to go through different phases or go through different stages. Initially, a product is being conceived, and then you probably have to carry out some discovery work and build the product, launch an MVP, a minimum viable product. And then it usually takes a little bit longer, and the product has to be, the initial MVP has to be adapted and changed in order to achieve product market fit and get it ready for the mainstream market and enter the growth stage. And at some point in time, the growth starts to slow down and the product becomes mature, and eventually it declines. And then you may decide to no longer offer it and retire the product. But some products exist for a long, long time. Some products exist for years and even decades, as in the case of Microsoft Office. And Microsoft Office obviously has been updated over the years, but it's been around for, I don't know how long, probably 30 years, maybe longer. So, that product really has had a good life. And that is really a key difference to a project. A project does not exist for such a long time. It doesn't go through those specific stages, you could say, or the life of a project can't be described in the same stages. Projects are typically much shorter in nature, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, maybe 18 or 24 months. And a project typically doesn't exist to create value for a group of users and customers and the business. It typically exists to achieve a targeted goal. And if it's a development project, so if we talk about a development project manager, then the objective of a development project would be to take a requirement specification and turn it into a shippable product. And if that product then becomes successful or not, well, that's not my responsibility as a project manager. But as a product manager, or equally as a product owner, my job is to maximize the value that a product creates. Whereas again, as a project manager, I'm given a brief, I'm given some form of specification, and I'm responsible for then turning that brief, that specification into one or more deliverables. So that for me are some main differences, and accordingly you get different frameworks and techniques. You get, for instance, the project management body of knowledge by the PMI, which I find a very useful collection of project management practices. And then you get various bodies and suggestions for key product management practices. Now, similarities, are there any similarities? Well, it depends. Yes, to a certain extent, I'd say, but I think it, excuse me, very much depends on the specific context, and it depends on ultimately the role, setup, and the frameworks that you use. So if we move into a Scrum context and we ask ourselves, well, where's the project manager in Scrum? And as you may know, there is no project manager in Scrum. The role doesn't exist. And I would argue if you implement Scrum effectively, you don't need a project manager. But in Scrum, we have a Scrum product owner. And there is a cross-functional development team, cross-functional self-organizing development team. And then there is a person called the Scrum Master. So I abbreviate product owner and I abbreviate Scrum Master. And then we can ask ourselves now, how is the work that a project manager does, how is that work accomplished in a Scrum context? Only by not having a specific role called project manager doesn't mean that the work simply goes away. That'd be amazing. And my take on this is, my answer is, well, the work is split, it's distributed, and it's largely distributed across those two roles. So I would suggest that a Scrum product owner takes on some strategic project management responsibilities. Particularly around release planning and tracking. Yeah. And the development team then takes on all the tactical project management responsibilities, say identifying tasks and estimating tasks and managing those tasks and staying on track from a day-to-day basis. And the Scrum Master, well, the Scrum Master really doesn't do any real project management. You could say that some of the people management aspects is something that traditional project managers do as well. But then things like explaining the process and making sure that an agreed process is followed, I guess that will be a formal project management responsibility of the Scrum Master. Yeah. So in Scrum, I would say that the Scrum product owner takes on some project management responsibilities, and those are the strategic ones related to a release. And you can also equate a release, the idea being, at least that's a traditional idea in Scrum, that we spend several sprints to build up functionality and then have a major release, or we release a new product version. Say, I don't know, what comes to mind, iOS 14, for instance, or a new operating version, or iOS 14.1, I think is the latest one at present. So that functionality would get built up across several sprints and then be released in one go. And that's what's meant with a release. And to a certain extent, the effort to create such a bigger release, you can look at that as a project in an agile context if you want to. Yeah. So I hope that was a little bit helpful.
Yep, it is. So I just want to add, so when I was working as a project manager, my KRAs were all around scope, budget, and schedule. But if I think, and if now I think as a product owner or maybe product manager, I think I have to look beyond those things. They are things which I was not focused as a project manager. Good. And the second part of it. So what advice would you give to the aspiring product managers? What would you suggest to them?
Yeah, again, nice question. So what I find helpful is to reflect on what are the kind of, so I think that the number of things, in fact, backtracking, depending on where you are in your journey towards becoming a product person, working as a product person, a product manager, product owner, I think it's helpful to say, what is the job that I'd like to move into? What is the role I'd like to move into? And then do a little bit of research or talk to people and understand what are the skills and qualifications that are required in order to be able to get a job like this. And there are typically two types of skill sets that are required. So to be a successful product person, I find it's useful to use the T model, which I think originally my colleague Ellen Gottsteiner suggested. So in order to be a successful product person, you need specific knowledge, and that's specific really to the product or the product category. So for instance, if I want to work on a Microsoft Office competitor, it's good to know generally about about productivity tools and maybe know what the competitor offerings are. It's good then to know about the domain and the users and customers. It's good to know about the business and how the business works in general. So those are the skills, the knowledge that you need in order to take care of a specific product. And then the second dimension here, the horizontal one, is the ability to solve recurring product management problems in a systematic manner. So that's the I'll call it the general product management knowledge. Sorry, it's a little bit, my handwriting is particularly bad today, even though it seems that I say that every time I do some handwriting. I should just really work on it. And then knowledge, there's a D missing somewhere, probably here. Yes, so in the general product management knowledge, I like to break that then down into 3 sets, which gives us a nice Venn diagram. Is always good in product management, I guess, to use a Venn diagram. Leadership skills, tactical skills, and strategic skills. And so I use those 2 models to analyze the skills that, or suggest that people use those models to analyze the skills they currently have. So you can ask yourself, well, how strong is the specific knowledge that you have about the product and the market and the industry that you'd like to move into? So if you want to take care of a, say, finance product, do you know anything about the finance business and how finance companies work? So if not, well, that's maybe something to sort of look into and see if you can acquire that knowledge and how you can do it. And what about general product management knowledge? And in order to do that, well, you can use this model and say, okay, do I have the right tactical skills? And by tactical skills, I mean things like the ability to stock a product backlog and prioritize a product backlog and update the product backlog and maybe know what user stories are, maybe being able to write user stories and break down larger user stories, epics, into smaller ones, being able to interact with the development team, knowing a little bit about the relevant technologies, maybe being able to write some user models like personas. And then strategic skills would be around product lifecycle management. The product lifecycle was one of the diagrams I showed earlier. Being able to capture and formulate a strategy and maybe validate and then evolve and develop a strategy and derive a product roadmap, maybe know a little bit about business modeling and creating a financial forecast. And leadership skills are the people skills to help you align the stakeholders, development team members, and to a certain extent also interact with users and customers. So things around, say, trust building and cultivating empathy, or resolving disagreement and conflicts, or collaborative decision making, or active listening, which I find very helpful for product people. And so you can then assess your own skills and say, okay, how strong are they in those areas? And for the job I'd like to move into, which skills should I maybe strengthen, or which skills should I maybe acquire? So you can then select targeted training and development measures, and that might be reading articles and blog posts, it might be listening to podcasts, it might be attending sessions like this one, it might be doing some e-learning or in-person training, whatever it is, and whatever works for you. I sometimes also get asked, what can I do if I have trouble to find a product management position? If people tell me essentially you just lack the skills, and how can I show that I have the skills, or how can I practically acquire those skills? And there are 2 things that I would suggest. The first one is, some companies like Google have product management trainee programs, so you can actually apply to be a product management trainee. So that's maybe something to consider. And the second one is, you don't have to have an app, or you don't have to have a digital product to be able to be a product manager or product owner. So you could, for instance, create your own YouTube channel or your own blog, and really try and manage that YouTube channel or that blog as a product, and clearly think about, what's the vision, what's the ultimate purpose, who's my audience, and why would people want to read my blog or watch my channel? What sets them apart from competing offerings? What's in it for me? And then can I derive a product roadmap from it? And from that product roadmap, can I maybe build a product backlog? And then go ahead and do it, and adapt your strategy, and adapt your roadmap, adapt your plans as you go along. And I think that can be a great way to acquire the relevant knowledge and deepen your skills, but also to showcase that, yes, you are able to apply product management practices. And hopefully that will make you put you in a better position to then get the job that you want to get.
Good. I think that covers a lot, and especially about this leadership skills. So for those who have not read it yet, the latest book by Roman, How to Lead in Product Management, that's one of the best, especially learning about the leadership skill.
Oh, good. Thank you, Sanji.
Okay, so I think let's move to the next question, and after that, Dinesh and Amit are going to pick maybe a question from the participant. So let me share my screen. Give me a second. So the next one, and this is more about this on-site offshore model. So where maybe as a product owner, you are sitting 12 hours or maybe 10 hours away from your Scrum Master and the development team. And there will always be some issue, maybe the trust issue or maybe some other, maybe the team bonding issue altogether. So what would be your advice to that product owner? How should he or she should work in this environment?
Yeah, nice question. So I'll try again and share my screen if that's okay.
Yep. Amit and Dinesh, you can keep a question ready for the participant and we can enable them.
So animate.
Ask it.
Oh, it isn't. Oh, well. So what I've tried to do here is, and I was hoping that this is animated, but for some reason it isn't. So sorry about this, is to just help you reflect on what are the key responsibilities of the three roles, product owner, development team, and Scrum Master. Because I think particularly when you work in a distributed setup, my experience suggests that it's particularly important to get the roles and responsibility piece and get that set up right. The idea in any agile context, but I think the idea or nearly a prerequisite for any successful product management practice is to establish a good connection with the development team or the development teams and the Scrum Master, just like you want to establish a good connection with the key stakeholders. So, try and enable close collaboration. Now that sounds easier than it is, and I'm sure that some of you who've worked with remote teams or distributed teams have experienced that. Establishing that collaboration is hard in a distributed environment. And generally, in order to be able to effectively collaborate, we have to trust people, learn to trust people, and earn their trust. And the number of things you can do that are helpful in order to build trust. The first one is try and empathize with people and try and really take an interest in people's ideas, perspectives, underlying needs, and what's going on for them, their emotions. No matter if you agree with them or if you disagree, no matter if you find the individual likable or dislikable. I mean, you can empathize even with a person that's showing very difficult behavior and still, recognize the individual as a human being who just may be going through a tough time or may have just acquired some very unhealthy behavior patterns over the years, behaviors and habits over the years. And then another thing that I feel is really helpful to build trust is to share. And we're all influenced by our backgrounds, by our family situations, by the environment we're in. So to learn a little bit more about people, I think really helps to empathize, really helps to build understanding and helps to build trust. And one way you can do this, and that's a suggestion from Patrick Lencioni, he suggested that in his book, The Fifth Disciple, is to share failure stories. Because usually we like to talk about the things we know and the successes that we've had. But it can be very powerful to talk about difficulties in our lives or difficulties at work and when something didn't quite work out so well. And that shows vulnerability and that increases trust. But of course, if that's something you want to do it in the right way. And then there's some remote teams that I've heard of that do like a crazy Friday. So, you dress up on a Friday, and particularly in a remote environment, if everybody works online, that's often much easier to do than in the office. So there's one team that regularly does pajama days, right? So the people literally show up on a Friday in their pajamas. And I don't think how that would work in the office. But again, if you work online, it's usually much more acceptable. So, and again, those are little things that I feel just help to make work more personal in a way, more maybe to a certain extent interesting or enjoyable, in where you give something away, and that builds trust. And again, the trust is the basis for collaboration. So really think about how you can foster trust, and hopefully you have a experienced Scrum Master as a partner at your side, and so the Scrum Master can then advise you and help you with this. But then the second piece, and that's really, what this diagram is about, is trying to get the role set up right. And as the product owner, really focus on what I feel is your core job. And as the product owner, your job is to maximize the value that a product creates and achieve product success. Your job is not to babysit the development team, or your job is not to replace the Scrum Master or be a Scrum Master stand-in. And I'm saying this because I often experience product owners who seem to think, or I often, quite often meet product owners who seem to think their job is to feed development teams forever with super detailed user stories. And it's like, why is that? Where does the idea come from? I mean, of course, when you work with a brand new development team and maybe people who haven't worked A, with you, and B, haven't maybe worked in an agile context, they typically want product backlog items, high priority product backlog items to be very detailed. And that's often a good way to get started. But I think over time, it tends to be then beneficial to teach people and coach people, enable people, so that the development team can take full ownership of the solution, the product details. And that includes the user experience design, the UI design, and all the technical solutions. And maybe at some point in time is able to do some of the user story and product backlog refinement on their own, or at least partially on their own. And the same in a way is true with the Scrum Master. There are many product owners who I meet who don't have a Scrum Master, or not a competent, qualified and a Scrum Master who's available. And so it's good to recognize that, and it's good to care and try and cover as much as you can. But if it becomes a permanent solution that you're product owner and Scrum Master, then I don't think that's sustainable, and I don't think that's healthy for you, and it's not good for the product either. So in that sense, it's in that case, it's better then to recognize it as an organizational impediment, and talk to people in the organization and see how you can address it, and how you can find a person that can act as an effective Scrum Master. And then there's you may notice there's bits of text between the product owner and the development team. Those are shared responsibilities. So I see user research as a shared responsibility between product owner, just like sprint goal selection and product backlog work. And so don't forget to involve development team members in research, user research, but generally product discovery, to help people understand what's coming ahead, get their buy-in to important decisions, but also allow them to acquire the relevant knowledge. It's usually much easier to own the solution if you understand the market, and if once you've met some users. If you've never met any user, if you don't really understand the market and the domain, it's very hard to take that level of ownership. And then teams tend to kind of focus on what they're used to, and that is very much the technical part of their work, and the implementation side of things.
Good. So there are so many practices. It again depends on your context. So that's good coverage. Great. So what we are going to do is maybe the next question, let someone from the participant ask it, right, Amit?
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, we do have a couple of questions which has been asked by the participant under this Q&A session, but we will only be able to pick one as of now. So Simon has asked something. So let's invite the Robin to ask.
Okay, yeah, sure. So what we will do, Robin, is we will move you to the panelist, so you can enable your audio, video, and you can ask your question directly to Roman. Here you go. You should be able to. Robin, are you there? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, a bit of background otherwise. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
That's fine. I'm at home, so yeah, I hope you guys can understand.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I had actually asked 2 questions. So my question, first question was that let me just recall what I typed over there. I was just writing it there. So in an environment where there is where there is a product owner and not a Scrum Master, how can the product owner enable the team to collaborate or work effectively?
Okay.
Yeah, nice question. Thank you for asking it, Robin. I'm not quite sure what I should say. I mean, there are various ways how you can try and help your development team. I mean, you can certainly try and facilitate the meetings. You can certainly try and remind the team members of the ceremonies or explain the process ceremonies to the team members. Sometimes teams then will find a kind of caretaker Scrum Master and ask one of the team members to sort of act as the Scrum Master. But I mean, essentially, if there's no Scrum Master, then you just have a whopping gap here in this picture, right? I mean, you know, there's no Scrum Master, so all this stuff kind of falls away. And if this stuff doesn't fall away, well, then it has to be soaked up, and some of it then is soaked up by the product owner, which means that the workload of the product owner just increases significantly. But it's not only the workload, it's also the diversity of the work. I mean, a product owner should really be a product professional, an expert when it comes to the product and when it comes to product management. If you now also have to be an expert in development processes and in organizational development and coaching others, it's like, oh my God. I mean, being an effective product owner is hard enough. There's other stuff. I mean, that's another lifetime you need in order just to learn that. Well, I'm exaggerating slightly here, but it is tough to be competent in both areas. So I think there's a good reason why Scrum suggests that people specialize. So my answer is, you know, it's okay to try and help as good as you can in the short term, but if it's a long-term solution, if you just don't have that Scrum Master, then I would personally encourage you to say, well, is that a context? Is that an environment where you can succeed as the product owner? And is that a job or a role then that you can continue to play if there's no change? Or to put it differently, I personally think it's unfair to ask people to work as Scrum product owners when there is no qualified Scrum Master. I think that's not right. The role set up in Scrum really does require qualified Scrum Masters who are sufficiently available. Otherwise, you know, I don't want to say it doesn't work, but it puts it puts a lot of strain on the individuals. And again, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. But it's easy for me to say, of course.
Okay, good. I think we should move on maybe to the next question, and that's again coming from the participant while registering. Right. I hope Robin, you got your response. So I know you have one more question, but we don't have time to cover 2 questions from you, so we have to move on. We are really sorry for that, but let's move on. Okay, this is about the stakeholder management, right? I know we have started doing Scrum, but the way our stakeholder management leadership behave, it's the same the old ways, right? For them, everything is on priority, or maybe they are more focused on the volume as compared to the value, right? And there may be a trust issue with the development team and the Scrum Master. So what would be your advice there? What you as a product owner can do there?
Yeah, nice question. So when I think about the product owner role, I'll just try and draw this up real quick. You know, we have then I think about 3 groups.
You may have to share your screen.
Oh, so yes, I do have to share my screen. Sanjay, thank you for reminding me. Otherwise, it'll be hard for you to see. So think about 3 groups of people. They're the users and customers, if there are any customers, and then we have the development team or teams, and then we have the stakeholders. So stakeholders, just to make sure we're all on the same page, have the same understanding, are people who have to make a contribution to the product in one way or the other. So for instance, somebody who's got a stake in the product, an interest in the product. So for instance, for commercial revenue generating product, that would be somebody from marketing, sales, or support, so a marketeer, sales rep, or a support person. And the product owner, I view the product owner here at the intersection, really. So at least the Scrum product owner. Yeah. Now, how can you manage the stakeholders effectively? Part of the solution for me is to be clear on which stakeholders you were dealing with and do some stakeholder analysis. And that's particularly helpful when you work in a larger organizations and you have a larger group of people who have some form of interest, take some form of interest in the product. And I would suggest that initially you step back and reflect on, okay, who are the stakeholders? Who do I see as a stakeholder who has an interest in the product? And then do some analysis. And this is one way, this is one tool you can use to do it. It was developed by two people called Ackerman and Eden in a book called Making Strategy. And it's called Power Interest Grid because it looks at two dimensions. So there is the interest is on the vertical axis, and power is on the horizontal one. There are only two dimensions. But I'm still managed to struggle with them. These different, and so we get these quadrants, these 4 quadrants, because we can say, oh, somebody has a lot of interest, lots of interest, or little interest, and somebody is powerful, or somebody has not much power. Okay, so people are typically interested in the product if they are affected by it in one way or the other. Either they have to work with it as users or they have to support it, for instance. And people are typically powerful if they either can influence or derail or veto an important decision, or if you need them, if you need their contribution in order to make the product a success. Yeah. And so we can give names to those 4 quadrants, and the bottom left one is called the crowd, and it's usually enough to loosely inform those individuals. So maybe there's a little newsletter you could do on a quarterly basis, or maybe you give people access to an intranet page, be it in Confluence or whatever, and that allows people just to see what's going on. And then above that, we have the next group of people, and that group is called the subjects. And those are individuals, for instance, like users, like I'd be a subject of Microsoft Office. So I have an interest, but no power, can't tell Microsoft how to evolve their Office products. But it might also be product people from other organizations, or somebody possibly from finance or HR. And what I would suggest is that you loosely involve them. You know, so you may want to poll them for feedback. You may want to expose early product increments to them. You may want to send them some surveys so they can share their perspective and their ideas. And then the quadrant at the bottom right, these people that belong into that quadrant are called the context setters. And these are typically more senior people in the organization, like head of development, head of IT, for instance. And one way to engage them is to consult them, maybe have occasional one-on-one meetings with them. And then the key stakeholders, so to speak, the people you should really focus on and you should really closely manage or collaborate with, are called the players. And again, I would suggest that you collaborate with those individuals and focus on them. Yeah. So then just a little little analysis to figure out, okay, who are the stakeholders I should really focus on? You know, if I go back to this bubble here, then these stakeholders here will be the players, right? Or I mean, these are at least the stakeholders I would suggest you want to focus on. And then the question is, well, how can you involve the players? And I think it's a good idea to involve these key stakeholders, these players, in the strategic work that you do and the discovery work and in the tactical work that you do. So when I think about product management, so this is execution and tactics, and here we have strategy and discovery. When I think about product management, so first of all, these work streams, so I think about these 2 work streams, and these 2 work streams are connected. There are feedback cycles between them, which these gray lines should indicate. It's very sketchy. And then if we think about where's the product owner, well, for me, a Scrum product owner should attend to both of those aspects. It's both product management work, Scrum product owner, but I think also that it's a good idea to involve the players, the key stakeholders in this work. And I think it's also a good idea to involve the development team members. Oh, it's getting quite small. Dev team members or representatives. Yeah, so involve the players in strategic work and discovery work. How can you do this? Well, for instance, through strategy and road mapping reviews. Yeah, so that you not only that you collaboratively create the strategy and you collaboratively create the roadmap. So you involve the stakeholders in those efforts, but then also on a regular basis, every 2 to 3 months, get together and review the strategy and the roadmap and adjust those plans as needed. And how do you involve the stakeholders in the tactical work, in the execution track, so to speak, or workflow? Well, in Scrum, certainly through sprint review meetings, by inviting them to the sprint review meetings. And the suggestion I like to make is to ensure that the key stakeholders, the players, are present in sprint review meetings at least once a month. So if you run short-ish sprints, bi-weekly sprints, or even weekly sprints, then maybe asking people to attend every single sprint review might be tough in terms of their availability, but once a month, I think, is a good rule of thumb. Yeah, it'd be good to have them at least once a month. Of course, when you collaborate and when you involve people in those meetings, make sure that you do not make the mistake of trying to please everyone. Your job is not to be a stakeholder pleaser, but to maximize the value that the product creates. I think there's a balance between not you exclusively making the decisions and trying to push them onto the stakeholders or force them even onto people. I think that'll be difficult given that you need the support of the stakeholders in order to progress the product and to make it or keep it successful. I mean, as product owners, as product people in general, we're not the boss, right? We can't, generally speaking, tell people what to do. We can't make people follow our advice and follow our leads. So we need people's goodwill. And a great way to generate goodwill and make it more likely that people understand and accept the decisions, particularly important decisions, is to involve them. But when you involve people and give people a say in the decisions, don't make the mistake that you try and please everyone, or that you allow the most senior person or the most vocal person to dominate and get it her way or his way. That would be actually, I guess, an anti-pattern of collaboration and collaborative decision-making. But what you must do is find a solution and make a decision that progresses your product, moves your product forward in the right way, a decision that is right for your product and right for the users and right for the business, but has as much buy-in as possible from the stakeholders and development team members. And so I hope that was a little bit helpful. Ultimately, it's quite a rich topic. It really starts by this figuring out who are the stakeholders I should really focus on, and then how can I involve those people. And as I said, my recommendation, my preference would be to try and really establish collaboration and establish regular collaboration. I've talked in my new book about building a stakeholder community, really building those trustful connections with the stakeholders. And also trying to build a stable group of stakeholders who you can work with for an extended period of time. So you get to know each other, you build trust, and then hopefully making decisions together will become easier.
Yep. This is good. I think you are right. So before we actually get into working with them, first step is to identify those stakeholders. That's good. And you use the word collaboration, and I think you have used it in your book also. It's not about managing the stakeholder, it's more of a collaborating with those stakeholders. That's the key. Good. So I have a question to ask, but I think looking at the time, what do you think, Amit? Should we have someone from the participant asking the question?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. We can pick one if we have time allows.
Yeah, I think we can. I think let's go with the Pragati. Pragati, are you there? So let me move you to the. So Pragati Shield. So go ahead, enable your audio and video and ask your question. You are on mute if you're talking.
Okay, sorry. Are you able to hear me?
We can, may not be so great, but still, but we can't see you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, there's some issue.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead. Go ahead.
my question is sometimes it becomes very difficult for us to accommodate NFRs and keep the cost also in check, especially when you are working in a agile environment Scrum and you have to make a releasable product every sprint. So how do we actually balance it, and where is the mark where we say that no, this is sufficient and anything above this in NFRs are going to be worthless for the company in terms of profit and not much of a uses for a customer also.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Pragati. I must admit, I acoustically didn't quite get the beginning of the question. So it's about balancing, but balancing about what?
Balancing about non-functional requirements like the security and other things, and the cost increase.
Okay, cool. Yes. Let me see if I can find a diagram that helps me explain this. Yeah, maybe here. No, that's the wrong one. This is there should be a diagram that I wanted to show. Yes. So when I think of it generally, when I think about what aspects in terms of describing a product, describing new capabilities of a product, what aspects should we address? I think about functional properties or functional requirements. I think about non-functional properties or requirements, and then I think about the visual design aspects, and I think about more complex user interactions, user journeys. And it's kind of natural to a certain extent to focus on the functionality and then maybe work primarily with epics and user stories. But I think the other three parts are equally important. And I mean, you alluded to it. If we neglect the non-functional requirements, then that may have a significant impact in the future. So if we choose if we overlook or ignore say performance requirements, the development team may choose the wrong architecture and make the wrong technology decisions, and the product may not scale in the future, and that may be very costly. So I really think it's up to us as product people, and it's up to you as a product owner to be aware that there's more than user stories that you need to attend to. Them there's more than functional requirements, and capture those other aspects, and really they should be captured and represented in the appropriate way. So one way to do this is to capture non-functional requirements in the product backlog, and you can do this if you work with a product backlog that consists more than just a simple ordered list, particularly when we talk about generic global non-functional properties, and the various ways how you can do this. I've suggested a template quite a few years back called Product Canvas, but the other ways how you can do it. But it's really just making sure that you capture those non-functional requirements, and you can state in your definition of done that in order for a product increment to be done, it must fulfill these non-functional properties or requirements. So that means you can't really release if the functional properties haven't been fulfilled. And as you, as the product owner, you should be the person who says what is done and not done. You should really be able to decide that. Don't know if that was helpful.
Yep. Okay, good. So we have just 7 minutes left. So and we have few more questions, but let me ask you maybe the one of the question which comes from the participant. So what do you think product managers should do differently to encase the opportunity in this virtual world?
Yeah, interesting question. I don't know. That's sort of the answer. So for me, I mean, it's an interesting for me, it's kind of interesting to look at that question, and it's something I've been asked a few times over the past few months. The reason that I'm saying I don't know is because for me, I've worked in a distributed setup and with a distributed team now for many years. And a lot of my client work's been online now for a number of years, or most of my client work's been online now for a number of years as well. So for me, it's something I'm fairly used to, and it's become, in a way, it's been normality for, yeah, as I said, a number of years. I think, again, what is really helpful when you are a product person and you are not close to your team for whatever reasons, be it COVID, be it because you're based in a different location, different country, is to try and get to know people and build that trust and keep that trust going. So a very practical technique that I started to adopt quite a few years ago is try to check in, particularly for any online sessions. So say I'm talking to the person that owns the design and development work of my website. We usually, before we talk about business, we usually have like a 5-minute chat. And it's just really to reconnect. It's just really to tell each other what we've been up to, what's been going on, particularly as we don't talk on a daily basis. We talk every week or every other week, really. So I found that really helpful, sort of plan in time. I think what's also really helpful for teams is to plan in time to hang out, having virtual coffees or virtual lunch breaks, spend time together online without having, in a way, the focus or the pressure to achieve something. You know, we're here together and we're online together and we must get through this agenda. And at the end, you know, we have to have achieved this. But, you know, just hang out and have a chat, just like you would when you bump into people in the hallway or, you know, at the coffee machine or the water cooler, whatever it might be. So I think that's really helpful. And then I certainly feel that you know, working online offers a lot of opportunities. I think it means that, you know, as a product person, you can consider working with teams that aren't local, and it really doesn't matter so much maybe anymore where people are based. And so, you know, you could work for companies and look after products that you know, 6 months, 12 months ago might have been much more difficult. So I personally would try and look at the positives, but I do realize that for a lot of people it's been a very challenging past few months and a very challenging period.
That's true. That's true. Very true. So we have 4 more minutes. Anything you would like to ask Amit or Dinesh? Do you have any before we go to the participant?
No, I think I'm fine. I already asked my question.
Yeah.
Before joining. Yeah.
We did ask. Yes.
Okay, let me ask in that case. So what is your thought, Roman, in terms of if I use a statement or in a question on product owner as a servant leader? I wrote a blog actually recently, and that is again inspired from your book as well as from Gunther's work. So, but I would like to hear from you. What do you think about it? In a Scrum environment, whenever we use the word servant leader, it comes naturally the Scrum Master. But is it only the Scrum Master? Why not the product owner?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think it's a very interesting one. And for me, it really relates to the intention of wanting to exercise leadership. So the idea behind servant leader is that you know, the first desire should be to help others. I mean, you know, some people feel the term servant leadership is difficult because, you know, talk about servant and, you know, but the idea really is, I think behind the term is that the desire should be, the intention should be to help people. And by helping people and trying to benefit others, then we kind of earn the right to lead them. We earn the trust, we understand them, we get to know them, and that puts us in a position then to guide people, to advise people, to lead people. And I think in terms of intention, that should always be the intention when we lead others. I mean, I mean, should ideally, but I mean, in practice, I think it's much more a much more complex picture, right? And people have very different ideas about what it means to be a good leader. You know, some people think a good leader is somebody who is very strong and tells other people what to do, is somebody who can make other people do what the leader thinks is right, be it through coercion or manipulation. So that's quite a common attitude, I find. You know, there are sort of also ideas around, I want to be a leader to foster my career and to have more respect, more recognition, and maybe earn more money, get a better job, move up the career ladders. And so what I think it's really, really helpful to reflect on our intention. Why do we want to lead? Why do we want to guide others? And you know, is it the right intention that we have? And I would agree that certainly in a product management context and in an agile context, it's really about helping people and being more like a guide rather than somebody who essentially tells people what to do and expects people to execute. That might work if you are a line manager and if you hold what's referred to as transactional power. But as a product person, as a product manager or product owner, we don't have that. So again, it's all about trust. It's all about people being willing to follow our lead and guidance and being able to influence people in a positive way. But I also think that people notice our intention sooner or later. So if our intention is primarily selfish, then I think people will understand that, and that will then undermine people's trust in us and again our ability to lead them. So yeah, leadership means caring for others. Leadership means taking an interest in others, and means being willing or trying to help others, but at the same time not sacrificing our own mental well-being. I think that's also important to stress. So being a leader or a servant leader doesn't mean that, how should I put this, we sacrifice our own well-being. It's finding a balance, but it's really, you know, leadership, you could say, should come from a, you know, to lead effectively, you know, leadership should really come from a deep care for others, and that for deep care for others and a deep care for ourselves.
Yep. Good. So we are at time, so it's already 1 minute over. So thanks a lot to you, Roman, and thanks a lot to all our participants. We are really sorry we are not able to cover all the question, but we will see what can be done. Maybe in a follow-up session or maybe in an offline response, but we will try our best to answer your question. But that's what it is. Any last word from anyone? Maybe Ahmed, Dinesh, Roman, anything you would like to say? So.
I'd just like to say thank you for having me. Thank you for attending, and it was nice to spend time with you. I hope it was a little bit helpful, and yeah, good luck and all the best to everyone. Thank you.
I must say that thank you very much, Roman, for taking us some time over here and you know, giving us such kind of insight, especially on product management. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks a lot. And the recording of this session will be available on the YouTube channel, and we will be sharing it with you all in case if you want to share with your colleagues. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sorry.
Can we stop recording?
I did.